Flywheel. Ayyeka.
I will use a presentation as a guideline for the webinar. It covers three main topics: a bit about Ayyeka, a bit about Edge AI, the way we see it, and a bit about the main difference between Industry 4.0 or Industrial IoT and what we see is Infrastructure 4.0 or the digitization of infrastructure. And let's jump into it. So, as I said, in the upcoming session, we will cover, or I will talk about three main themes. They are different, but they are tightly connected to one another. The first one will be digitization of critical infrastructure, which is the story of Ayyeka. The second one will be our point of view about implementation of artificial intelligence, and more specifically machine learning tools into the domain of critical infrastructure, how to do it, why to do it on the edge, what are the benefits, what is ahead of us, and things like that. And last, we'll touch briefly about some questions that we receive all the time about the term Infrastructure 4.0 and how it relates or not relates to Industry 4.0, which is a European term, or Industrial IoT, which is a North American term. And those three things together literally guide us as Ayyeka as we step into the commercialization of our solution and technology. And we are on a journey that started some years ago. Started as a garage company with me and my partner Yair. We are good friends, and we brought together different backgrounds of hardware and software and domain expertise around project and infrastructure. And we set up on a journey to create Ayyeka, and through Ayyeka to revolutionize the transformation of critical infrastructure into a digital infrastructure, meaning the way they run critical infrastructure over the past 10, 20, and 50 years is almost the same. They use mostly manual tools or manual inspection tools around many aspects of the operation. And we are under the vision and the journey to transform some of the operation of the utility into a digital one, meaning relying more on data. And in order to do this, some years ago, we set a roadmap or a strategy that will enable Ayyeka solution to enable different infrastructure plays to embark the digital journey. And to simplify it, we said it's a three-step process. And sadly, there is very little room for shortcutting it, meaning everybody wants to start on the right, on number 3 in this slide, on the data utilization. But sadly, this is the holy grail. But sadly, if you only look into data utilization and you miss the first 2 steps, you typically end up with avoid projects. And I will explain. In our vision, it's a systematic process that starts with data creation, meaning you need a systematic approach to create field data from just around any asset you have or any parameter you have. It can be pressure, level, flow, velocity, vibration, energy, different quality parameters, displacement, just around any type of data you can think of should be readily available and easy to extract from the field asset. So this is stage number 1. Then you go to the second challenge, in which it's a data management. You need to have a proper data management strategy and solution in order to properly manage the data you created on the first step. And when I say properly manage, I'm talking about 3 main aspects. The first one is interoperability, meaning the ability to work with this data with other systems, not to create another silo. The second one is cybersecurity, meaning you need to make sure that you properly manage the data and the whole data creation management system is cyber secured. And the third part is, I would call it future proofing. You need to have a very modern and flexible data architecture around the solution in order to support the ongoing trends between cloud and on-premise installation, between different architectures of the databases architecture, in order to support decades to come of usability of the solution. And only when you manage to successfully execute the first and second step of the strategy, meaning you are able to create data properly and to manage it properly, only then you are in the position to utilize the data to your benefits. And utilization comes in many different ways and forms. It can come in data management systems, in alerts of abnormal events. It can come in modeling, optimization of systems, meaning every utility or every customer have different views of what utilization means for him, but it's always around data. And only when you trigger those 3 steps in the process, meaning you create a data, you manage it, and you utilize it, then you can really say you're benefiting from an end-to-end digital solution. And this is the story of Ayyeka. In order to accomplish this, you need to master 3 different technology domains. You need to master the edge, meaning edge devices, where it comes to cellular or wireless communication, battery power or power management, ingress protection, ease of deployment, Bluetooth application with mobile apps, future bulletproof the installation to have like a very rapid deployment, etc. This is the challenges around step number 1. Around step number 2, the domain of IoT, meaning the data architecture, the cybersecurity, the data protocols that are being used, etc., around the IoT platform expertise. And when it's come to 3, step number 3, the data utilization, it's around machine learning and AI. This is how we believe it's the best way to extract value from the data. So in order to get the end-to-end solution from 1 to 3, a solution must bring together 3 different expertise into one unified solution. And this is the story of Ayyeka. This is where we started some years ago, and this is what we are promoting across different stakeholders, all the way from regulators, government officials, and financial institutes, engineering companies, utilities, and the infrastructure space is very diverse where it comes to stakeholders. You have the value-added resellers, you have the integrators, you have the distributors, you have the end users. We worked across the board, and we do it on scale. So we started back in the garage with a very minor deployment, mostly in Israel. But over the past few years, we scaled up, and the majority of our footprint is in North American, yes, but we have South American, Europe, Far East, Asia, etc. And we work also hand in hand very closely with major brands or major companies in the space, Schneider Electric, Veolia, Krone, and you see this is a partial list of the companies we're working with. And with them, in partnership with them, and working very closely with end users, we are literally bringing the revolution of digitization to the field, because we are one of the only companies, if not the only company, that bring end-to-end from the data creation all the way to the utilization stage in a very, very easy to use package. Any questions so far? No questions? Nothing to for me to add, to supplement? Okay. And so now that we talked about what Ayyeka is doing and with who, let's talk about why we are doing that. And we are doing this because we believe, or I would say we know already, and others know as well, that the critical infrastructure is in a very dire situation, meaning they are working under extreme stresses, and we see more and more events in which critical infrastructure is failing. And strangely, we used to see it only in, let's call it, more challenged economies, but we see it more and more in what you can consider the leading economies of the world. We see it in Central Europe or in Northern Europe. You see it in North America. You see it in major economies in Asia Pacific. And not only that we see it happening more and more, the severity of the events getting more and more severe, meaning we see major shutdowns of electrical grids, major problems in drinking water, major problems in wastewater collection and treatment. And in the current state of events, we have a very bad combination of macro conditions that bring together or come together into a very complicated situation. The first one is the aging infrastructure. Many of the world infrastructure is over 50 years old and counting. and it's crumbling more, meaning aging infrastructure mean a lot of requirements around the maintenance. In many cases, you need to rebuild the infrastructure. Combine it with increased operational stresses. So weather pattern changes, rains are become heavier, or it pours more, become hotter, colder, strange weather patterns. We see the hurricane in Kentucky. For those of you who remember, like a few months ago or a few weeks ago, the hurricane in Kentucky, like hurricane in Kentucky are a known thing, but a December hurricane with such devastating power, I think it's the first. It's the first documented one. And it's all over the place. Bring it together with urbanization, meaning more people are moving from the countryside to the cities, creating more stress on the resources and infrastructure in the cities. And we call it the increased operational stresses. Combine it with workforce proficiency. Very mature and educated engineers are retiring. And there is a lost generation, actually 2 generations are lost, the 40 years old and the 30 years old. Are a lost generation in the infrastructure. Many young professionals around the age of late 30s, early 40s did not join the infrastructure workforce. So the abilities and skills are declining. And last but not least, the government is becoming very, very stringent in the regulatory compliance, meaning all over the space, you need to report more, you need to make sure you're working under a regulated environment, and the government have a say in almost everything you're doing, where it comes to drinking water quality, wastewater, dumping wastewater to the river, power quality, in different aspects of the oil and gas safety operation. It's all over the place. Combine those 4 themes together, and you will find yourself probably understanding that technology adoption is the only way forward in order to create a better infrastructure into the future. And this is the Infrastructure 4.0 theme. We'll talk about it later in this presentation. But around infrastructure, we will build smart infrastructure. You have the ability to work better. So, and this brought Ayyeka to the understanding that, yes, we have a great solution, perfect timing, and a great need ahead of us that bring a very strong tailwind to the story of Ayyeka, with users, with stakeholders, with government officials. Everybody now is talking with us about how to implement digital infrastructure strategy and implementation in the field. And when we look at digital infrastructure or digital solution, we say, leave Ayyeka aside for a second. Leave the story of Ayyeka aside for a second, and let's imagine how ideal digital solution will look like. So obviously it will be a smart one, right? 2022, it started. AI, you hear AI all over the place, and AI is one set of tools that will bring machines into a smarter outcome. So a digital solution in infrastructure must be a smart one. It's not enough anymore just to collect data. You need to make good use of it. Second, it must be affordable to both to deploy and to maintain, meaning together it's a life cycle cost, and you cannot scale up rapidly a very expensive solutions because the magnitude and the scale is immense. So the solution itself needs to be affordable to deploy and maintain. And very simple, let's call it plug and play and fully autonomous, meaning you cannot bring a team of PhD engineers every time you need to deploy IoT solution. It's not like launching the next, I don't know, like a space telescope that NASA and many other agencies work decades to do. The solution, the digital solution infrastructure should be built into the infrastructure in a way that a plug and play approach to deploy it, right? The same thing that, think about the personal computers industry. Now, when you buy a laptop, you don't need to be a guru anymore. Just see the power button and it's working. This is the reason it's very popularly adopted. 20 years ago, when you need to install Windows, I don't know, 95 or Windows 3.11, for those of you who remember, it was a project. Not everybody had a laptop. Same with IoT. Scale equals plug and play, or plug and play equals scale. This brings us, when something is very scaled up, you need to make sure that it's very well protected against cyber threats. Critical infrastructure is one of the most attacked sectors, meaning everybody knows that they have deep pockets and they are willing to pay if this is a malicious criminal activity, or it's critical for the government and it can be used in future conflicts. Everybody is waiting to see what is going on in Ukraine, for example, now with the critical infrastructure in Ukraine. Will they suffer a massive cyber attack from one of the sides, most likely the Russian side? Yes or no, it's a big question now. So you need to make sure your digital solution is well protected. And last but not least, because infrastructure is complicated, you need to make sure that you come up with a modular solution. Literally one solution that fits many use cases, because if we take the critical infrastructure, it's a very big word, and then say, you know what, let's only talk, I will take a random one, let's only do wastewater. Inside the critical infrastructure, I said wastewater is great, but it's still big. You need to do flow, you need to do I&I studies, you need to do wet weather modeling, you need to do strategy, government strategy. What do you need to do? And because the needs are so varied, you need to make sure the solution itself is versatile. Meaning, when I say versatile, can measure different parameters and provide different outputs in the same infrastructure. You don't want to deploy IoT after IoT after IoT solutions just to do different functions. When you already, it's not uncommon that people install Ayyeka, let's say in a manhole, and you open the manhole and you see 3 others IoT solution, and you ask the customer, what is this? He said, yes, over the past 10 years, we need to measure pressure, so we pick this solution, and then we need to measure humidity, and we pick this solution, and then we measure, I don't know, flow, and pick the third solution, all in the same site. And we said, okay, and what was the outcome? They said, typically, none of the solution works, and they specifically doesn't work together. And they replace it with, we have a modular solution, so one solution fits it all. So if you need to make your smart move and pick an IoT solution or digital solution, please, we really encourage everyone to make sure that those are the key decision points that you should look after, or the key criteria. Is the solution smart? Does it have a future of machine learning tools? Is it affordable on the maintenance side more than the deployment side? Is it plug and play? Is it secured, and is it modular? If the answer is yes, you have a good chance to succeed, because if one of them is missing, you have a very good chance to fail. Any questions? Nothing? Questions, feedback, remarks? Okay. And when, assuming you follow our recommendation and you pick the right digital solution, the impact is immense. Meaning, and we typically in Ayyeka, we gauge the impact, or gauges the success in 3 different vectors or 3 different dimensions. One of them is the capacity and longevity of the infrastructure, meaning a good or successful digital solution deployment across a critical infrastructure dramatically increase both the capacity and longevity of the infrastructure. When it comes to what it actually means, it means that you can build less and you can push many of the investment into the future, which is the really big impact for the critical infrastructure space. The second thing they immediately report is the reducing the operational cost. It's about save or improve the efficiencies. And the third thing is, in many cases, you can dramatically reduce your environmental footprint, or extend some of the more beneficial part of the environmental impact into the solution, because you build less, you drive less, you rebuild, or you build smaller than was originally planned. So all of those aspects are dramatically improved. And when doing it correctly, it's important to do it smart. And when Ayyeka says smart, we typically talk about AI. Everybody says AI, and we specifically says edge AI. What edge AI? Edge AI means take the AI, the artificial intelligence capabilities, and make sure you do it, some of them at the edge itself, meaning on the infrastructure level itself, not in the cloud, not in the servers. And the reason for that is because the infrastructure have unique set of requirements. And if I need to highlight 3 main benefits of AI in infrastructure, one of them will be the improvement of the data quality, meaning you can dramatically clean the data, improve the data, and replace bad data parts with better looking data sets through AI tools. The second thing is to enhance real-time awareness and action, meaning catch events in real time. And the third will be the productized domain expertise, meaning bring a lot of the know-how from the person, the smart engineers on the management engineers level into the field itself. But doing this in the infrastructure space requires some tricks. And the reason is because, for example, if you want to detect real-time events and your device is battery powered and asleep, you need to make sure that even though the device is on low power mode, it still detects things. And in Ayyeka, we say that everybody wants to do AI in critical infrastructure, but the majority of them is blocked because you don't have enough data in real time, because the majority of the data creation infrastructure is battery powered. So you can only call the servers once every few hours or once a day. And second, connectivity to external cloud is not welcomed, or in many cases not even allowed. This brings you to the requirement that you must do the AI on the edge itself. Okay, so again, if you have limited power supply and you cannot connect to external cloud, it means that you must bring some of the computational tasks into the edge itself. And when you're looking into it, and we've done this exercise, you will see on the right that you need to tackle the power budget. It's running on batteries. And then you need to talk about limited computational resources. The edge devices are very limited. You need to do the training of the data sets. It's not a walk in the park in critical infrastructure. And then last but not least, you need to develop the algorithm and models and bring them together. So in Ayyeka, we looked into those barriers. We overcome all of them. And we are now leading the way to bring the AI that will bring the power quality improvements, real-time event detection, and productization of field data, of field intelligence into the field itself. And if I need to put it, in a table format, you will see that productizing domain expertise, both edge AI and cloud AI does it, but traditional IoT will not do it, because traditional IoT typically talk about creating the data, managing it, but doesn't bring the benefits from it. The real-time awareness, the cloud AI cannot do it because the data is not readily available on the cloud in real time. So you must do it on the edge. And if you want to improve data quality, again, meaning the best thing to do it is on the edge, it has numerous benefits. And it brought Ayyeka to the conclusion, and many others that we are speaking with, that the best path forward in digitization of infrastructure is to bring it into the edge. And this is what we are after, this is what we are doing, and will be more than happy to demonstrate it in the near future, what we can do. Any questions around Edge AI?
I had a question, actually. Maybe you want to talk about it after, but how this will be applied in terms of what we see going on right now with the global climate change, or when we have more and more floods or drought, how somehow this can be applied of today's events.
So when you embed the AI into the solution itself, obviously all the benefits are coming to the front, and your solution become immensely smarter. So you can benefit from less travel to the field, less operational cost. In many cases, you can even, when you rebuild it, you can build it smaller. So you dramatically reduce the footprint. So many parameters around the environmental sustainability are dramatically improved by adding intelligence to the infrastructure itself. But also think about, like, the immediate thing is about traffic, right? If you're able to better manage traffic, which is smart infrastructure, you dramatically reduce environmental loads, right? The best place to see it is like in COVID days when you have like lockdowns. When you have less travel, immediately all the parameters are improved: air quality, noise, wildlife, animals, health, etc., etc.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so last but not least, and we are on times, is the discussion between infrastructure 4.0 and industry 4.0. So a few years ago, the term industry 4.0 came to the front stage to describe the fourth industrial revolution, meaning bringing connectivity and data tools together to improve industrial operations. This is the reason it's called industry 4.0. And it's a European term, and the Americans, or the North American, typically call it industrial IoT. Lately, last year, I think, a new term was coined because many companies, stakeholders, utilities, government try to deploy IoT or industrial IoT or Industry 4.0 into the infrastructure and failed, dramatically, colossally failed. And they failed because the people who were involved in the implementation of this Industry 4.0 methodologies into the infrastructure space thought as the infrastructure as a kind of an industry, which is very tempting to do, right? Because the desalination plant is a plant, and power plant is a plant, and treatment plant is a plant. But let's not get confused, because although you have plants in infrastructure, infrastructure is not an industry. It's also not a dispersed industry. It's different. And many companies that try to bring technology solutions into this space was proven to be failing, because I think from our perspective, they missed to understand that there is big difference between the industry and the infrastructure. So whereas in Industry 4.0, the target application is anything industrial, meaning typically it's around the optimization of production lines, and it can be pulp and paper, food and beverage, oil and gas, even water and wastewater, but it's everything around the production sites, the plants. And the business is typically B2B, meaning you sell to other businesses, and other businesses judge the solution in a business perspective. And the challenges is mostly a market fit challenge, because assuming the solution is working, it's only to guarantee it's work for you. In the infrastructure space, it's completely different, because the target application is different. It's not anything industrial, it's anything critical. So it's being judged in dramatically different criteria. Second, the business is government, and government, it does care about money, but it's not everything about money. Meaning proving efficiencies is not the only thing. In many cases, they have different criteria, such as customer relations or government relations, environmental aspects, political reasons for deploying or not deploying things. So it's a B2G, it's a business to government business. And last but not least, the challenge is not to demonstrate the market fit, but the challenge is to educate the market. Literally explaining or presenting the vision in which digital solution will help infrastructure to move forward. It's much different than explaining a factory automation or plant automation manager that your solution can do automation better, because in the plant they already know automation, they just need to do it better. In the infrastructure that doesn't know automation, they need to rethink or rewire themselves to think like in automation processes. And I believe that those three categories or those three items are the main difference between the infrastructure 4.0 vision and the industry 4.0 vision. And understanding this is crucial when you come to implement a solution like Ayyeka. If you don't think like infrastructure and you try to work as industry, you will fail again and again and again. The Ayyeka started to succeed when we started thinking like infrastructure, meaning talking with the right stakeholders, the consultancy engineering, the government officials. We started talking their language, we started to think like they think, we start to understand their concern. This is what makes us move forward. Whereas if you continue as Industry 4.0 and you start to convince them that you're correct, you typically fail. So this was just a quick recap, because in one of the free webinar questions, there was discussion or a question about the difference between Industry 4.0 and Infrastructure 4.0. So this was it. This was a brief focus into what Ayyeka is all about, into Edge AI, why do you need to put AI in critical infrastructure and why it must be on the edge. And last but not least, what is the main differences between Industry 4.0 and Infrastructure 4.0? So as I said, if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. If not, we are also reachable through the email, through info@ayyeka.com, or my personal email, ariel.stern@ayyeka.com. Feel free to reach out. And if there is no other questions, I will give you 1 minute or a few minutes to ask. Have a great rest of the week and Happy New Year.